This past weekend, a friend of mine sent me a poem without comment. It's by the famous and revered American writer Wendell Berry, who takes up the agrarian tradition from his fellow Southerners many decades ago, the ones who wrote I'll Take My Stand back in 1930 in defense of the American agrarian tradition, and more or less against industrialism. You could take it as a kind of striking back against the modern project that had been going on ever since the Romantic poets. But Wendell Berry is unique in that he left his academic position decades ago to go back and take up life as a farmer in Kentucky. He has series of books of essays. He has novels, the Port William novels, that I highly recommend, about a little town that still has a sense of community and where you can really feel the incursions of the harshest parts of modern life more intensely than elsewhere. This little poem, which I didn't know, is called The Peace of Wild Things. And it seems to me particularly appropriate both for the situation we face now and for our students, because I think there's a way in which the movement of reverie in this poem speaks very much to what they find when they go out into the wilderness on their expeditions. The Peace of Wild Things by Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. A little poem of consolation, you might say. You don't know how literally Berry means that he goes and lies down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water. I think he's talking about an inward movement to those places where he's been, to those moments of still water that remind you, I think, of the 23rd Psalm. He's praising the peace of wild things, especially because they do not tax themselves with the forethought of grief. So many things about our human situation involve what we anticipate that might happen, the bad things that might come, whereas these wild things do not tax their lives with this kind of forethought. I also love this image at the end of the poem of the day-blind stars looking up into the daytime sky. You forget, unless you're, say, down at the bottom of a very deep well where you can experience this phenomenon. But you forget that behind the blue sky, behind the day blind, so to speak, and he picks up the idea of a blind, I suspect, for ducks there, the day blind stars waiting with their light. The light of the stars is still there even during the day. It's some interesting play on day and forethought that Berry is working with here. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. The grace of the world. This is that recourse to the beauty of creation and of nature that somehow consoles us in our fallenness and reminds us of the freedom of wild things, and more than that, the peace of wild things.